Hi, my name is Hazem Gaber, and today we're going to learn about the 10th project management principle, which is risk. Risk means that we continually evaluate our exposure to opportunities and threats. People always think of risk as something negative, but a risk can be positive. When we see a negative risk, we have to prevent it from happening. When we see a positive risk, we have to take advantage of it. The positive risks are called opportunities, and negative risks are called threats. We continually assess risks for significance, costs, whether or not they are realistic, whether or not they're owned by someone, and whether or not a stakeholder agrees to them. We're going to get into risks and math and calculations later on in this course, but for right now, we just want to know that a risk is an uncertain event that, if it occurs, it can have a positive or a negative impact on one or more objectives of the project. Risks can be internal or external. So, opportunities could result in reduced costs, improved performance, increased market share, and enhanced reputation. Whereas threats could result in delays, cost overruns, and failures. A project team must monitor the overall project risk. Overall risk is the effect of uncertainty on the project as a whole. And overall risk comes from all sources of uncertainty, including individual risks. Management of overall risk keeps the project risk exposure within an acceptable range. And there's many different strategies, including maximizing probability of achieving overall project objectives. So, a project team will engage with the relevant stakeholders to understand their risk appetite and their risk threshold. A risk appetite describes the degree of uncertainty that a person or organization is willing to have in anticipation of the reward, which is the project outcome. So the risk threshold is the measure of variation around an objective that reflects the risk appetite. So someone with a risk threshold of 5% around project costs has a lower risk appetite than someone with a risk threshold of 10%. So if my project budget's $1 billion and my risk threshold is 5%, then I'm only willing to spend another $50 million on the project. Whereas if my risk threshold is 10%, or I might be willing to spend an extra $100 million if things go wrong. So everybody's got their own risk appetite depending on how much money they have, how long they've been around, their cash flow, how much reward they expect to have. There's many different things. Everybody's different. So you might have money to burn and say, hey, we've got a great idea and it's not a lot of money. Let's just try it. Doesn't matter. Now, effective risk responses can reduce project threats. So we must think about our response must be cost-effective, realistic, owned by a responsible person, appropriate and timely to the risk, and agreed to by the relevant stakeholders. So we must all agree on how we're going to respond to a risk if it takes place. Now, the risk can be within the organization level, portfolio, program, project, or product. And the project may be a component of a program where the risk can enhance or diminish benefits or value. So the project itself can be a risk. Now, organizations and project teams employ good risk evaluation planning and proactive risk implementation, and that way they find less costs when the risk materializes. There's a whole book, and it's called The Standard for Risk Management in Portfolios, Programs, and Projects, which covers risks in greater detail. If you have any questions,